April 1992. 1 year after Rodney King, Tupac Shakur witnesses LAPD officers beating another unarmed black teenager, but this time there's no news crew, no witnesses, no justice waiting. Just Tupac, his video camera, and a choice that will either expose the truth or cost him everything. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Los Angeles, California. April 18, 1992. Saturday night, 11:23 p.m. The city still carries the scars of the riots that erupted exactly 1 year ago when 4 police officers were acquitted in the Rodney King beating. 53 people died, thousands were injured, over $1 billion in property damage, and an entire city learned that justice is not guaranteed, even when the evidence is caught on camera. The air still smells like smoke and unresolved anger. Burned-out buildings stand like tombstones marking where hope died. This is South Central, where tensions simmer just below the surface, where every interaction between police and civilians carries the weight of history, where one spark could ignite another explosion that might consume what's left of a community already hanging by threads. The streets tell stories of systematic neglect, potholes that have been ignored for years, street lights that burn out and stay dark for months, liquor stores on every corner but grocery stores miles away, schools without textbooks but plenty of metal detectors. This is what abandonment looks like, what happens when a society decides certain neighborhoods don't deserve investment, protection, or basic services. What grows in that vacuum is anger, desperation, and the kind of violence that makes evening news but never gets explained in context. Tupac Shakur drives his black BMW down Crenshaw Boulevard, heading home after a late recording session at Solar Records. The car is modest by hip-hop standards, no chrome rims or tinted windows, nothing that screams for attention from police looking for reasons to make stops. He's 20 years old, his debut album Tupacalypse Now, released 6 months ago to critical acclaim and controversy. Politicians call his music dangerous. Police chiefs say it promotes violence against law enforcement. They don't understand that he's not creating the anger, he's documenting it, giving voice to experiences that mainstream media ignores, speaking truth about realities that comfortable America prefers not to acknowledge. Every song comes from experiences like the ones that shaped his childhood in Oakland, Baltimore, and New York, watching his mother Afeni struggle against systems designed to break her spirit, watching neighbors disappear into prisons built to warehouse rather than rehabilitate, watching children grow up afraid of the people paid to protect them. His lyrics aren't fantasy, they're field reports from a war zone most Americans pretend doesn't exist. The video camera sits in his passenger seat, a Sony Handycam he bought specifically to document the reality of street life. Not for music videos or publicity shots, but for truth. For moments when the official story doesn't match what actually happened, when police reports describe resisting arrest, but witnesses describe murder, when the news talks about officer-involved shootings instead of executions. He's been carrying it for months, waiting for something worth recording, something that proves the points his music makes about police brutality, systematic oppression, and the war being waged against young black men in America. Traffic is light on Crenshaw. Most people are home, safely behind locked doors, avoiding the kind of late-night encounters that can turn deadly without warning. The smart ones know the rules of survival in neighborhoods where protection means self-protection, where calling police might bring more danger than help. Tupac drives carefully, both hands visible on the steering wheel, speed exactly at the limit, no sudden movements, giving no excuse for the kind of traffic stop that could escalate into violence. He's learned these survival techniques from his mother Afeni, from older men in his neighborhood who've navigated decades of hostile interactions with law enforcement, who understand that staying alive sometimes means swallowing pride and accepting injustice. That's when he sees the red and blue lights flashing 3 blocks ahead. Police activity. Probably a routine traffic stop or domestic disturbance call. Nothing unusual for this neighborhood, where police presence is constant but protection is rare. Tupac slows down, planning to drive past quickly, avoid any potential complications that come with being young, black, and in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as he gets closer, Something in the scene ahead makes his blood freeze. This isn't a routine stop. This isn't officers conducting normal police work. This is something else entirely. 3 LAPD officers surround a teenager who can't be older than 17. The kid is on the ground, curled in a defensive position, hands over his head, trying to protect himself from batons that rain down on his back, his ribs, his legs. The sound carries across the empty street, the wet crack of wood against flesh, the desperate gasps of someone trying to breathe through pain and terror. The teenager isn't fighting back, isn't resisting, isn't even moving, except to absorb the blows that keep coming. His car sits 20 feet away, driver's door open, hazard lights blinking, no weapons visible, no drugs scattered on the ground, no evidence of any crime that would justify this level of violence. Just a young black man being systematically brutalized by 3 officers who seem to be enjoying their work. Tupac pulls over a block away, engine still running, hands shaking as he reaches for the video camera. His mind races through the calculations of what he's about to do. If they see him filming, if they notice the camera, if they decide he's a threat to their version of events, this could end with him face down on the pavement, or worse. But if he doesn't record this, if he drives away and lets this happen without documentation, another Rodney King beating occurs in darkness, with no evidence, no accountability, no justice. The Rodney King verdict was delivered exactly 1 year ago. 4 officers caught on camera beating a man unconscious, and they walked free. 53 people died in the riots that followed. The city burned because people realized that even video evidence might not be enough to convict police officers. But maybe, Tupac thinks, maybe if there are enough cameras, enough documentation, enough people willing to risk everything to record the truth, maybe eventually justice becomes unavoidable. He turns on the camera, checks that it's recording, and starts walking toward the scene. Each step brings him closer to a confrontation that could define the rest of his life, however long or short that might be. The teenager on the ground is named Marcus Washington, 17 years old, senior at Dorsey High School, planning to attend UCLA in the fall on a partial academic scholarship. He was driving home from his job at a local grocery store when his car started making strange noises. He pulled over to check the engine, thinking it might be something simple, something he could fix himself rather than spend money his family didn't have on a mechanic. That's when the police arrived. No call for assistance, no reported crime, just 3 officers, who saw a young black man alone on a dark street and decided he represented a threat that needed to be neutralized. They approached with weapons drawn, shouting contradictory commands, demanding he put his hands up while simultaneously ordering him to produce identification, to explain what he was doing, to justify his presence in his own neighborhood. Marcus tried to comply with every instruction, but the commands came too fast and contradicted each other, created an impossible situation where any action or inaction could be interpreted as resistance. When he reached for his wallet to show ID, they screamed that he was going for a weapon. When he raised his hands, they yelled that he was being non-compliant. When he tried to explain about his car, they decided he was arguing. The first baton strike caught him across the shoulders, dropping him to his knees. The second hit his ribs, forcing all air from his lungs. By the third strike, he was on the ground, and they were taking turns, one holding him down while the others delivered systematic punishment for the crime of existing while black in their jurisdiction. Tupac approaches with the camera rolling, staying in shadows, using parked cars for cover. The quality isn't perfect, the lighting is dim, but the audio is clear. Every impact, every grunt of effort from the officers, every plea for mercy from Marcus, everything is being recorded. One officer, a sergeant based on his stripes, kicks Marcus in the stomach hard enough to lift him off the ground. Another laughs, actually laughs, while delivering baton strikes to the teenager's legs. The third officer stands watch, scanning the street for witnesses, for cameras, for anyone who might document what they're doing to this kid. That's when he sees Tupac, sees the camera, sees a young black man recording what was supposed to be invisible. The officer shouts a warning to his partners. All 3 turn toward Tupac, their attention shifting from Marcus to this new threat. Marcus gasps for air, tries to crawl toward his car, but his ribs might be broken, his legs might not support his weight. He's conscious, but barely functioning. The sergeant starts walking toward Tupac, baton still in hand, badge glinting under streetlight. His voice carries across the empty street, full of authority backed by the implicit threat of state-sanctioned violence. The sergeant orders Tupac to turn off the camera, to delete the footage, to forget what he's seen. Says this is police business, that Tupac is interfering with an investigation, that continuing to film constitutes obstruction of justice. Each word is chosen carefully, designed to create legal justification for whatever happens next. Tupac keeps filming, keeps the camera steady despite his hands shaking, speaks clearly for the recording, stating the date, time, location, describing what he's witnessing. His voice is calm, but his heart pounds against his ribs like it's trying to escape his chest. He knows this moment will either change everything or end everything. There's no middle ground. The other two officers leave Marcus bleeding on the pavement and move to flank Tupac. Standard tactical positioning, cutting off escape routes, establishing control through positioning and implied threat. They're experienced at this kind of intimidation, experts at making civilians comply through fear rather than legal authority. But Tupac doesn't run, doesn't stop recording, doesn't delete the footage. Instead, he does something that surprises all three officers, something they haven't encountered in years of bullying compliance from frightened witnesses. He starts talking, not to them, but to the camera, creating a real-time narration of events, a play-by-play description of three police officers threatening to assault him for documenting their assault on Marcus Washington. He's turning their intimidation tactics into evidence, their threats into confessions, their abuse of power into material that could destroy their careers. The sergeant realizes what's happening, realizes that everything he says or does from this point forward is being recorded, that any violence against Tupac will be captured in detail, that this situation has moved beyond their ability to control the narrative. 1 year after Rodney King, with the city still healing from riots, another video of police brutality could ignite something even worse. The standoff lasts maybe 3 minutes, but feels like hours. 3 armed officers with badges and legal authority versus 1 young man with a camera and unshakable conviction that documenting truth matters more than personal safety. The weight of recent history hangs over everything. The knowledge that video evidence changed nothing for Rodney King but might still change everything for Marcus Washington. Finally, the sergeant makes a decision, orders his officers to tend to Marcus, to call an ambulance, to follow proper procedures for someone injured during an arrest, not because he's concerned about Marcus's well-being, but because the camera has made this encounter too visible, too documented, too risky to continue. The officers step back from Tupac, return to Marcus, and suddenly their behavior changes completely. They become professional, concerned, helpful. They check his pulse, ask about his injuries, radio for medical assistance. They perform for the camera, creating evidence of their proper conduct, trying to establish a different narrative than the one Tupac has already recorded. Marcus is loaded into an ambulance, conscious but barely speaking. He makes eye contact with Tupac before the doors close. A look of gratitude mixed with terror, the understanding that without the camera, this night might have ended with a body bag instead of a hospital trip. The officers take Tupac's information, write down his license plate, make it clear they know who he is and where to find him. The implicit threat is obvious: this footage disappears, or consequences follow. They can't arrest him for filming, can't confiscate his camera without cause, but they can make his life difficult in ways that don't require legal justification. Tupac drives home with the footage intact, knowing he's now a target, knowing that documenting police brutality makes him an enemy of people with badges and guns and legal authority to make problems disappear. But he also knows that Marcus Washington is alive, in a hospital instead of a morgue, because someone was willing to witness, to record, to refuse to look away. The footage becomes evidence in Marcus's excessive force lawsuit. The case settles out of court for an undisclosed amount. The 3 officers receive written reprimands and sensitivity training. No criminal charges are filed. The system protects itself, as always, but this time there are consequences, however small. Marcus Washington graduates from Dorsey High School with honors, attends UCLA on a full scholarship funded by his settlement money, becomes a civil rights attorney specializing in police misconduct cases. He credits that night with showing him his life's purpose, with proving that documentation and legal pressure can create change even when justice feels impossible. Years later, when people ask Tupac about the night that defined his commitment to social justice, he doesn't talk about courage or heroism. He talks about necessity, about the responsibility that comes with having a platform, with having a voice, with having a camera when others are suffering in darkness. The video becomes part of a larger movement, a growing collection of documented police brutality that eventually helps force policy changes, training reforms, accountability measures that save other lives. Not enough change, never enough, but progress measured in young men who live instead of die, in officers who think twice before delivering that extra blow, in a system slowly, reluctantly learning that actions have consequences when they're captured on camera. April 18, 1992. The night Tupac Shakur learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is refuse to look away. That sometimes a camera is the only weapon that matters. That sometimes one person willing to witness can mean the difference between justice and cover-up, between accountability and impunity, between a teenager living to see graduation and a family planning a funeral. The most powerful tool isn't always a gun or a badge or legal authority. Sometimes it's just someone brave enough to press record. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button.